Sensitivity is intelligence. With grace and skill, you have abundance. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. Host Kelly Brickle is a psychic medium healer, numerologist, and teacher. Her passions are learning about the soul and energy. Whether it's through spirit, emotion, or vibrational numbers, there's always a pathway of information waiting to help. Now, here is your host of the Psychic Hour, Kelly Brickle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Hour on WLTKDB, Let's Talk Radio. Welcome. And we're doing another Monday episode a little bit earlier. So just come on in. It's a 12:30. If you're in the Pacific time zone, it's a 3:30. If you're in the Central time zone, time zones are so fun. We have so many different people from around the world and also various states that come and watch the show. So I'm in gratitude. Thank you. Welcome. Today's subject we'll be talking about is kind of, it's like we usually do a word, but I was just really drawn to a concept. And it's the concept of going within, which can lead to really feeling like we have our North Star or that we're not lost or strength. So going within really cultivates so many different concepts. It's not just one word because it can feel like you're getting everything at times. It quells what we need. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit. And then we're going to bring on our guest today, Jacob Cooper. And he has a really fascinating story. He's going to go into it. He had an NDE when he was young, and he wrote a book about it. And he really built his life going forward to help people after his experience. So I want to dive into that with him as well. I'm grateful for him being on the show today. So looking within. All right. What a fascinating concept. Some people know the power of looking within, and others will kind of like laugh it off even. I remember when I was young, I had a friend and her energy was all over the place. It really was. She was very extroverted. She loved to have fun. She loved being around people, and she would always put herself in environments where she could socialize. But then she started having quite a lot of, I guess, complications, misunderstandings as she was growing, right? And putting herself in so many different environments, wondering like, wow, why am I getting such, different feedbacks from people? I don't understand people. Like I want something, I'm not getting it. And it was really multifaceted. I'm summing it up. But I was talking to her and I did feel like this was kind of an out there concept because, at the time I was in my 20s and she was in her 20s. And I'm like, have you ever thought about going within? And she just like looks at me and she laughs at me and she's like, what would that do? I'm like, well, all the answers are within. And even further, what does that even mean, right? And so I started the conversation with her, but she just wasn't intrigued. She just wasn't. And that's okay. Because going within, there has to be that curiosity, there has to be that intrigue. And not everyone is going to be brought that direction. It's such a large part of ourselves when we discover what we can do within, because our soul is interacted with. Also, our spirit, our energy, different layers of our body, like our aura. There's so much information about what is collected when we go within. This reality that we are experiencing, it's very much external. It's made up of the senses largely. We're on a physical plane. And we learn how to navigate this physical plane through our physical senses, our eyes, how we touch, of course, and anything else is not really taught always. Meditation is starting to be taught in school or as a therapy within young people, and it's starting to become more normalized. And really, that's what you're doing with meditation. You're just going within. And the first couple of moments, you're kind of just discovering that layer before you dive further. You're kind of like in this juxtaposition of your eyes are closed, right? And you can feel that your eyes are closed with your physical body. With your sight, you just see darkness. You hear either things going on around you and you can get distracted, or you almost hear kind of reminders of your day, right? Or echoes of other things. And sometimes when we're so distracted, we can smell things, or we're just like, uncomfortable as we're sitting down. And so what's happening is we are transitioning. We're becoming hyper aware of our external senses for a moment. So then we can enter this kind of doorway of new sensory, sensory experience of what it feels to go within. And when we go within, we see things differently. We feel things differently. We hear things, we taste things differently, and so on and so forth. And that's really when people get into the clairsight, clairvoyance, clairsentience. There's a whole world that opens up. And not only do you see, let's say, memories of your own life sometimes, but you actually start seeing energy. You start becoming energy sensitive. So I know when I was younger, like in my teens, I would frequently question how much the energy that I was experiencing wasn't real. Um, I did have certain things come to my attention where I was like, there's something to this, right? But it wasn't until I went within did I start giving myself answers, did I start being in touch with my spirit. And I started to not feel so lost. Before I went within, I would feel very disconnected from my body, almost like an out of body experience, but you're awake, right? And you're functioning, and you're just like, I just, my physical senses, they just feel like distorted. It feels like I'm off kilter. And as soon as I started to learn to meditate, and as soon as I started to learn to just quiet and sense things differently, I actually found and felt very even keel. And so there's this equilibrium of the external part of us, which is like for me, it's Kelly Brickle. And then the internal part of me is a very small fraction of Kelly Brickle. That's the inside of me is connected to lifetimes of my soul. It's connected to my overall dharma, as you say, right? And really, dharma is just, learning about the truth of reality, like who we really are, what we really are. It could be, in great connection to something larger than ourselves, or it could just be, the facets of our soul and what we have experienced. And it's not just this lifetime, but this lifetime, we really do have to focus on it. We're here for a reason. And so a large part of our life will be in the external world, and that's okay. That is our purpose for people who are energy sensitive and who are guiding others, or even doing healing work. Yes, there's going to be a fraction of their life where they do have to go more inward than the average person, or they have to do more work where they are in that space, learning, understanding, because there's so much wisdom there. There's clarity there. So anytime you feel lost, anytime you feel the world is like, whoa, and the world that we live in, that's the external realm. It really is, right? The United States, the different countries, Europe, Asia, right? That's all part of the physical world. Planet Earth is part of the physical world. And sometimes it is a lot. The news is a lot, or what people are going through, even locally. It's a lot, and it's okay that it's a lot. And if you ever need to recharge, the most powerful place is within. because you get that strength from something more than yourself, with the understanding of there's more to it than just this external situation, which I don't understand. So there's many different ways to going within, many different ways. Sometimes people have flashes when they are dreaming. They wake up and they're like, wow, I experienced something that felt so real. Um, the aha that I was given, or the clarity that I was given, was something that came to me when I woke up. It stays with me, and it's really powerful. And it could be a message from a loved one that really, links up something that you had doubts or inconsistencies in, or it could be a message from your spirit guide. I've had dreams when I was younger, more so, where I had my spirit guide coming to me, and they would let me know, more than one, they would let me know, kind of like, hey, it's okay, you can feel safe. And it wasn't words, it was a feeling, and it was a showing, and it was just this comfort. And that comfort and that experience couldn't have come if I was looking around me, if I was trying to find people, if I was trying to talk to people and looking to feel safe and looking to feel comforted. It was this experience where my soul led me to that. So many, many different ways, many different forms, and it has to come from a place where the world is not busy around you. So if you find yourself too busy, if you find yourself a little lost, you can balance it. And if it's a little bit difficult to meditate, know that you're just turning the knob. And maybe the door seems a little bit jammed. Maybe you're not quite sure about the room that it opens to. And maybe it feels foreign or scary or uncomfortable to really shut off your senses and see what comes up. You know, for a moment, it could be nothing and it's perplexing. But I encourage you to just keep going, because if you keep going, things are going to open up, right? A room will present itself, almost like the room of requirement. A room will present itself. A pathway will show itself to you, a thought, a feeling, an emotion, an experience. What you seek is seeking you, and that's very true with your intention, especially if you're slowing down and you're committing to, I'm going to see what happens. And you keep showing up, even at first sight, first guess, it seems not quite what you expected. So, going within, there's a lot to it. Just skimming the surface. So think on those things, feel on those things, and we're going to go and talk with our guest in a moment. And I'm going to ask him how he goes within, for sure, during this episode. But for right now, we're going to take a break, and we'll see you back in a few. Oh, I'm still here. See, sometimes it's not what you expected. The journey, the journey is not what you expected. You intend for something to energetically flow, and you go, huh, I got this moment instead. And that's okay. There's a reason, there's a notion, there's a space for why you had to be here. So we're going to try it again, because try. That's the name of the game. We'll be back in a moment, and we will see you then. And we're back. Hey, the joys of having a live show, you just go with the flow. It is what it is. And so, all right, I am going to invite Jacob to come in a moment. And for everybody with us on the show, inspired by his near-death experience from a very young age, he has facilitated transformative encounters, spiritual awareness, and empowerment through his sessions and seminars with people. Jacob Cooper is a clinical social worker, certified Reiki Master, best-selling author of Life After Breath, and certified hypnotherapist who specializes in past life regression therapy. So I want to give a warm welcome to the show, Jacob Cooper. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Hello.
Great, great. All in divine timing. An honor to be on your program.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you. Yes, divine timing. We will take it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful intro. I loved it. Yeah.
Hey, it's you, right? We have to celebrate you. There's
Oh,
so many.
no, no, not about me. Your speech in the beginning. I'm just a guy, but thank you. Yeah. I get bored of
That's
my
fantastic.
intro, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're both fantastic, and it's interesting you say that because yes, the first portion is very much an inspiration,
Mm,
and I try to have it meaningful. But the second portion in the intro, that's your life. That's your life's work. It's very special. It's very beautiful. Like we often go, well, yeah, that's just me, but those that's so many years in
mm.
development for you to become you and you're still going.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I think having a near-death experience could put people in different vantage points, but you could easily have it and say, "Oh, I see the light," and I'm not gonna go and try to help people just hold on to it. But I think what was a survival mechanism and thrival mechanism was using this for the greater good. That this wasn't just about me; it was just so much more than myself, and about giving it, to others and empowering others through this near-death experience that I had. Uh,
Yes. If you could too, can you take us from the beginning? You were quite young when you had this transformative event come into your life. Was not easy, I expect.
No, no, but rewarding. I had suffocated as a result of pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough. When I went innocently to a playground one day, and after losing all of my breath and suffocation through whooping cough, which is a fatal cough, often for children and infants, which I had it. From losing my own breath, I was able to surrender to the breath of eternity, or who we are. The breath of God, the breath of Source, whatever we want to call it. And, having this near death experience opened me up to so many things which I chronicle in Life After Breath, but I had awareness of my own, spirit guides, angels, the source of all that is, was, will be, and there's different vernaculars and words for that. As well as soul's purpose that I had, and other lifetimes that I lived, and the choice and knowing of what this life was about. And so it was profound in so many ways, but it just reminded myself that this life isn't just a physical life. There's so much guidance and intelligence that's a weight that's alongside and parallel with us at each step of the journey. So this is just we're spiritual. We truly are spiritual beings having this human experience. But it's one thing to know that, and it's another thing to see it directly in front of you, hitting you in the face. So, and my hope is that people don't have to have their brain cracked open, which happened to me due to suffocation, for God to come in. That people could have it through less traumatic occurrences. So God could be found in all things, even in the most traumatic and difficult moments that I had in my NDE. Oh.
Did you have before the experience, the NDE, an awareness of a spiritual connection to something beyond yourself as a small child? Did you feel like you were aware as a child before this happened? Do you have vivid memories, or is this kind of the precipice that just kind of opened up such like keen understanding at a young period?
Yeah, when I was an infant, my grandfather used to call me the Buddha, and that sounds self-aggrandizing, and it wasn't because I was depicted the way Asian cultures depict the Buddha as with abundance and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sure I was a chubby kid, like healthy kid, like most kids, but I had a very much of a quietness to myself and a wisdom, from birth, from what I'm told. But as a kid, I was always very much tuned in. But this near-death experience certainly enhanced a lot of mediumistic, intuitive capabilities, and I knew the brain, which is just merely a filter between the two worlds, from going through, the neurotrauma that I had due to suffocation, was a lot more open as a filter to work, between the two worlds. And so I had a lot of other subsequent transformative interdimensional communication, as a young child. And um, adults could hold on to spirits, but kids are a lot more sensitive. And I think adults could be more have a lot more world wisdom, but kids could have a lot more spiritual awareness, because they're very much tuned in and not as programmed.
I
Yeah.
I absolutely believe in that. Like, and let me know if you agree with this or how you feel about this. Like even being quite young, like more so like 3 or 4, I have these memories, right? And I just remember being a whole person, like the same person I am now, obviously with different understandings, yes, with different perspectives and life experience. But I just feel right, like just because you're young doesn't mean you don't understand and you don't see things and you're not
Mm.
aware.
Oh yeah, there's people who are old as anything, but they act pretty young. That's not a bad thing, and people who are young who are old, and that's more of a soul thing than anything else. But it's also an empowerment thing too, because I think in a way, growing up, we're kind of taught to be on a conveyor belt, and there's, stage developmental expectations, and so we're kind of like a that square in a box kind of thing. But then some people are able to get empowered, and others are just have a hard time, stop being leaves and waters. But I think really this life and this practice about being the empowered, untethered soul, and being you, which I think is the most spiritual act that we could do, is to be authentic to what's really there. Oh,
Absolutely. With that said, when you had your NDE, if you remember, what was the first week like after that, the first month, the first year?
yeah.
Because that took time to recover and process. And
It's funny, and I think if you're not causing people to ask questions or thought provoke, you're not really doing your job. And my NDE is thought provocative in a sense that it's very different than what you see in the media. But I don't mind taking up that task. I have an Aries moon and Aries rising, so we're all about breaking ground and being pioneers, and having things a little bit different for people to see. But I don't remember much from my infant life other than these transformative experiences from my NDE and experiences outside myself. And that makes a lot of sense because this wasn't produced by my brain, it was just filtered through it. But I had a lot of mediumistic experiences and conversations with like higher intelligence as a young kid. But I wouldn't go around labeling that. It just to me was very normal. I wouldn't say I'm psychic, I'm having past life. I didn't have a name for it, but a lot of ways it was great, but then sometimes it was also intrusive too. I just, because there was such a pace that was increasing year by year as a kid, that almost to kind of keep up with it, you had to fall in love with regurgitation over the world of imagination, and that was difficult. So I think to survive, I had to almost bury this down, but it was always there subliminally, very, actually very close to me. But I think to thrive, I needed to integrate it into this world at the right time.
did you try to interact with that side of you with your peers when you were quite young?
Yeah, actually, I talk about this in Life After Breath, where I remember quite clearly I was having, interdimensional communication, and I was seeing spirits, on the other side and stuff like that. And I turned to a classmate. I was in preschool, and they looked at me like I was on some Timothy Leary trip or something like that. And so, yeah, I suffocated when I had whooping cough, but I also felt like I suffocated in this world that was so close to me, yet I felt so different from, and I felt so isolated from. And it's just like we were, the same skin, but beyond that, we didn't have much in common at our core. It was like a world that very much forgot who they were, and we're just kind of like walking around blind. And I had to just respect that and, try to live with, have radical acceptance of that, but that wasn't so easy.
Who did you find that you gravitated to at a young age then, to connect, to feel like there was some semblance?
Yeah. Sometimes in our life we wait for angels on the other side or mystical angels to come, but sometimes we forget that angels are here in human form too, and this earth could be a training ground for us as spirit guides and angels on the other side. So I was very blessed within my own backyard to have people who came unexpectedly as guides and angels within my own family. And I come from more of a traditional Jewish Orthodox family. We're not into airy fairy, rainbows and unicorns kind of thing. We're more of this life, this earth, making it, the best that we can, and then that the after stuff will work. But I was very fortunate to have a couple people who were able to understand my language, which was in my later teens, early 20s. And so, like you were saying before, it's so versatile, but the term that it's all in your own backyard is true, not just in terms of awareness, but it could be also be true in terms of the support around us that sometimes we forget or overlook. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you said into your teens and 20s, you kind of had more support. And I think that's a really interesting time period because, when you're going through all your hormones and your changes, right? Like different parts of you surface, and you almost become hypersensitive at that time in your life too. So what did you find within yourself, suppressing for a amount of time and then, being ushered into your teens and 20s?
Yeah, I grew up with, in a way, a God that I needed a divorce from. It wasn't a good depiction. It was just almost kind of like my worst nightmare, which was very like strict and obsessive and ritualistic and jealous and everything that I just didn't want to endorse or support. And so this whole new profound shift where I was able to find this inner God versus this outer God was a big transition, and that allowed a lot more freedom and acceptance. Because we kind of grew up loving shows like Mr. Rogers, which to me is like a very strong, droplet of God. And Mr. Rogers is about loving you for who you truly are.
Yeah.
But yet, this God taught in religion is a God that loves you minute to minute based on what you do. It's almost kind of like this hyper helicopter temperamental parent, and so, um, that's what I was able to really repair was this new profound relationship with the God that I was taught versus a God that I always knew in the depths of my own being. But it was complex because on one hand, there's a youthful part of you in the body, but then there's the soul part of you that knows that you're not Jacob, you're experiencing this teenage years, but beyond that, is an eternal soul that's just experiencing this, but it's not the totality of where you are, at each stage. You know.
And who did you find around you that helped nurture like these understandings of God in a different way, and the world and how you meet it?
I had different family members with me. I even had a cousin of mine who also had a near-death experience as an infant, and
Wow.
she also works as like an intuitive now. So just like I said, having a lot of these people in my own backyard, that as kids that I, didn't knew that they knew all these, black belt moves. Like I didn't know they had it in them. I kind of underestimated, what they had in their arsenal. So it's just funny when you really sit with someone, you could find, a lot more than what you put in your mind or what you peg them to be. People could surprise you if you open up with curiosity and wonder. Um, you know, that opens us up to new infinite possibilities. So I was very lucky to have, that in my family. But it was also intuitives that really helped me out along the way. I had like a reading when I was in my later teens and I was going through a very tough time, and um, this reading really like she reminded me of who I was. She just mentioned that I had a big calling, that I would be speaking in front of a lot of people. And this happened two times in the span of like a couple of months where someone randomly came up to me in a yoga studio and said that you have a lot of people that you're going to be talking to. At the time, I you know, Well, a part of me it rang true, but then at the time I was just like, a nobody in a community college, like just living at home, struggling, a very difficult dynamic. So, like I said, angels come in many forms, and their messages come in many forms too.
Did you feel an inclination before these people said to you, like, you're going to be talking to a lot of people, you're going to be helping a lot of people? Did you feel an inclination where I got to get, my life started? I want to do something I don't know how, or were you not even thinking of
You know, I I definitely knew that because that was a part of my NDE that I saw this, but I almost kind of like gave up on that after a while. But this kind of reinforced that yes, that the dream is real and it's happening and it's true. What I didn't expect was really to have a sole focus on my NDE. I thought maybe I would be talking about things of psychology or like a Tony Robbins thing, but I thought it was like, a part of me did and a part of me didn't, but a part of me thought like it was something so far outside of myself. And then when I started to think about it, I'm like, damn, I have this right inside of myself. Like, I don't have to look for these other messages. I could talk about my NDE and people understand it. And the first book that really gave weight to that was a book by Betty Eadie that was gifted to me called Embraced by the Light, which was about Betty's near-death experience. And so from reading that book, I was like, wow, there's a term for this. There's other people who have this. There's people who are could be helped by this, and I'm just holding on to this selfishly my whole life. And so, seeing the transformation that it could have on people and that it had on myself, I was very motivated to pay it forward.
Absolutely. And you referenced that you were shown this too during your near death experience, that you were going to be working with people and teaching people and speaking in front of people. So what, if I may ask, if you can well, there's so much, right? If you can kind of just go through the different things that came to you while you were on the other side, your consciousness was on the other side.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, and I know you mentioned this early on, where you just kind of like turn a dial when you turn inward. And so, the other side, it's kind of like the internet. It's not like a place that you could just point and say it's right here, right? It's could many ways when I was crossing over, it felt like I was going upwards and infinite miles away from this place. But on the other hand, it was right overlaying this reality too. And so I think the other side in heaven is who we truly are at our core. We're beings from the other side. And so we're not only to create heaven on earth, we are beings of heaven here on this earth. And sometimes we forget that. But I was able to not telepathically have this, but to see it through the depths of my own being. It was just like as if it was physical, but it was anything but physical because it was so beyond any colors, sounds, or dimensions. It was just, kind of like turning this reality up, several notches beyond, this reality as we know it. But, the spirit guides were just, incredible. And I was able to see a male and female guide. And I just remember just a lot of embarrassment of how I forgot that they were with me the whole time. And it wasn't their judgment, but it was just like, geez, like I knew at some part they were, but like to see them, it was just so profound. And I'm like, wow, there's so much around us in this journey that sometimes we might lose sight of a part of our lives. But the angels that I also saw in my NDE was just as profound. The angels were just an endless array of angels that were floating, right in front of me. And it's as if you take this reality and just turn it like a little dial. There's angels filtered right all around us that sometimes we forget. And they were just these beings of unconditional love and light. And they looked at the world through what I called God lens, which they were here to just serve, love, and just look up at humanity, not down. Just giving love unconditionally without expecting anything back, which was so far into our world. And I mean, once in a while we see that, but then, no matter what, we still have that person and boundaries, but they are just no boundaries, just pure giving, pure love, nothing separating that. I was able to connect to different soul family members and beings that I knew that I was connected to on the other side. Different lifetimes, that I lived, a couple different lifetimes that was, in parallel to this lifetime. And then, seeing that I would be speaking in front of many different crowds. And when I spoke, it wasn't like I was better than anyone, but I was one with the people, and I was one with elevating the energy field. And as beautiful as heaven was, I say that could wait, because to create it here in this earth, is even better in some ways. And I saw that as a unique window from having this experience. So I know I highlighted a lot more, and I know I probably said a bit, but certainly if you have any questions on specificities for viewers, that I would love to elaborate on anything else.
Oh gosh, I could ask questions all day. So honestly, yes. How long did it feel? Did it feel like hours? Did it feel like a month? Did it feel like minutes that you were there to experience all this? And
Yeah.
yes, that's you kind of can't put a time on that, but I'm just wondering how stretched out that moment was with somewhat of your perception. And then also you said it's beyond kind of sight, uh, colors, I should say. It was beyond colors. So were you aware of any geometrics? What were you aware of visually that
Yeah.
was different?
To answer the first part, there wasn't time. It was kind of like if you read C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, when they go into the wardrobe and they go to Narnia and they felt like they've aged a million years, but only to come back to see that their bodies are exactly the same. Time has passed in a way. And so, for myself with this NDE, it felt, like years, but the time that I felt, yes, it felt like that, but there was also beyond that. And you see, in our world, we're used to time as basing our reality. Like Thursday, we have something coming up, we're going to be braced and stretched, but Friday, we're okay. There's something good, But here, it was beyond linearity. It was an awareness with time that all is well, was well, will be well, from the greater soul's perspective. And it's if you're hearing that, it sounds like we've heard that before, but to experience that, right in front of you, that it's all good, and you're fine, and you're an eternal being that can never be damaged or harmed, and you are just experiencing this lifetime that feels like a nanosecond to the soul. That you go on, you're eternal, you're infinite, and so when you think about that we, no matter what we go through, we just can't die. We go on, and there's no end. That will bug out the mind. The left brain can't understand that, because at its origin, it's linear, and we're talking about nonlinear, reality. And so the time was not there. In regards to dimensions, I would say it was just like a brown gold color, the best way I could describe it, but it was just so much more beyond that, where the colors had a color beyond this world, but beyond that, the colors, had sounds. It's kind of like I never tried LSD, but like when you like look at something and has a life to it, and it's not just color, but beyond the color, there's a color, and so it's kind of like the closest equation that I could have is like the chakra system, right? When we have red, and it's a color red, but red, is an expression of something. There's a language to it. There's an awareness to it. There's a purpose to it. There's a personality to it. And so it's kind of like these things that we see on the surface value here in the physical, with the whole, identity and persona to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like on kind of just basic form. It's almost like synesthesia. If you've
Yeah,
ever,
right. Like I know
but
Pharrell Williams, I think, has that, he said, but yeah, yeah,
Anastasia. Um, I've never heard Pharrell Williams talk about it. I believe it though. Like a lot of musical artists talk about their
mm,
relationship with sound, like that
right.
they have like sometimes feelings or visuals with sound. So it's actually really interesting. But that makes sense. I think like Kanye West was talking about it once too. Like you're making me think of other people. Like I can hear color or whatever. I don't know,
He
but
said a lot of things, yeah. I don't
right?
think there's anything he hasn't said, yeah. But that's a Gemini. They like to bark, yeah, yeah.
It's just from years ago that that's kind of percolating as you say that. But yeah, like everything is kind of just happening at once in a way where you're able to feel, hear, and like even taste if you need to. Like, oh, this is happening like together rather than separate.
Mm, mm. Yeah,
I
yeah.
I
There's
guess
no
I'm not explaining it.
separation.
I'm not
No, no,
explaining it
you're
very
doing
well.
it great. You know, there's an incredible depth behind just the surface of something, and there's a life behind something we see as stagnant. You know. Uh,
Yeah. I appreciate that understanding. I guess the best way that I can kind of connect to that is when you are intuitive or you have a psychic connection or a mediumship connection, when information comes, a loved one, for instance, I'm just going to do a mediumship example. They'll present a story to you and you'll feel the story, right? You'll hear the story and you'll see the story all at once rather
mhm,
than they're just talking to you and you can only hear it. It's
mhm.
just so much more full body than you can ever expect until it happens, right? So on your level, you have quite more, right, than just those three senses being stimulated. My
Mhm.
goodness. So it sounds really fantastic.
And people love to hear that. When you think about it, you know, let's say like a John Edward has, you know, a reading at a place, and there's what 500, 600 people, maybe 10 people get read, but 600, 500 or 600 people are willing to go there, knowing that most likely they're not going to be read, but to be in the presence of the awareness and the intelligence of those on the other side that they love, and to be in presence of that healing. So it's amazing, you know, the value, you know, that those on the other side have in our everyday lives, and what we use to kind of transform our reality, and the knowing, you know, that they're here watching us with us, you know.
It's yeah, there's so much going on than just that one-on-one connection, the
Yeah,
group connection or how your story, how it affects people, it just ripples as
yeah,
needed.
yeah.
Absolutely. The reason I ask about geometric too, as well, because I notice energetically that everything is kind of connected geometrically. It's
Mm,
quite fascinating. That's a whole conversation in itself. I don't know if it's like that on the other side or what you experienced when you were connected, because you said like angels are almost like they're overlapped on us practically. They're so
mm.
close.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to find the term, but like I guess the term for like synchronicity or something like that is like two angles, no, coincidence. Like they're like two angles coinciding with one another, something like that. So it's a mathematical kind of principle that we put into, you know, kind of spiritual practice. So it's just interesting, you know, with coincidences that two things, you know, connect, two angles connect. But I'm not the biggest like sacred geometry guy. I know a lot of people are into the mandalas, you know, and that's great. I just not so much my thing, but I'm more like I'm a color guy, you know.
Oh
So
yeah,
and I believe color has a very big therapeutic value, you know, so
yeah.
that's what I try to use to where I live, where my office is, just to create a lot of ambiance and people to just open up a bit more in my practice. Yeah,
No, I understand. I'm much more of a color person.
yeah,
People who connect sometimes to that sacred geometry, it's almost like in school they were good at geometry, like they're very connected to shapes and lines and
yeah.
they're spatial individuals. So I hear you. The only reason I had that moment is, or I have that thought in my head that I share with you is
Mm,
because I started seeing lines everywhere. So I was like,
wow.
oh, I'm actually experiencing it. It sounds bizarre.
Mm,
Again, that's a story, if needed. But if I didn't have it happen to me, I probably wouldn't have even thought about it. And it's happening all the time. You just have to tune in. It's
yeah.
like, woo, yeah, there's shapes all around us as well as color. Um, and like, have you had experiences with the aura too? Because you said you're a color person.
Yes, I mean, definitely in my Reiki sessions, I do, you know, tend to pick up on that a lot. And you know, throughout life, I've had OBEs and stuff like that, out of body experiences. You know, I felt, you know, the auric field, the electromagnetic field. I do feel that, you know, sense that. But again, I know the brain is such a pivotal filter in our life. And so the more relaxed my brain is, you know, the more open I am to a lot of this stuff. When it's more over analytical, then, you know, that side kind of isn't as intense. So that's why I love the way that you start your show, because meditation is just so pivotal for us to kind of be in flow with our being. It's kind of like we're these hybrid beings, but we're just kind of just using gas instead of the electric part of ourselves too. You know, and so when everything is working, we go through life through a lot more grace and ease. And It's a lot better. Doesn't mean that the waves change. It just means that we're more skillful as surfers with those waves. So.
It's true. It's true. And sometimes meditation gets my logical brain going even more. Like, because I,
Right.
I I love, like, just, I'm sure you can understand, just crystallizing and having words behind what's happening so I can share.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that, like, language comes from the left side of your brain. So it's funny, but that part of yourself can be stimulated through the spiritual side too, as well. It's just right. It's a quite different experience. It really is. So beautifully that you mentioned Reiki. When did you start your Reiki journey, and what really called you to it?
I started probably my early 20s, early to mid 20s. I just started getting into it. I went through a couple sessions and just, love that there's an organization behind, energy healing. And I love just the different structure, formats of it, as well as very drawn to Eastern practices and, just belief systems. So I love that it, you know, had that component to it. But to me, also, Reiki was very much in a way of giving back what I was given in my NDE when I kind of saw the angels just sending energy, and I was really saved by the breath of eternity and this eternal awareness. For myself, everything that I do is just to give back people who at times feel out of sorts, feel out of connection with their life force, and that's what Reiki is life, universal life force, translated. So it was a way to give back what I was given, in moments when I was deprived of all things of life force. Yeah.
Absolutely. And everyone who's a practitioner, even though it's a common, how can I put it? It's a certain vibration. That's what I'm trying to say, of an energy stream. It's the energy stream of Reiki that is connected to how you're channeling in that moment. Even if so, what I'm trying to say, that there's this common energy stream that we're all connected to as a Reiki practitioner. Everyone, I feel, utilizes it differently or has different experiences with it. So what comes into your Reiki sessions with your awareness of the other side, with the awareness of your experiences?
A lot of angels, connect to people's loved ones a lot. Animals come through quite often. I connect to people just think of loved ones, but sometimes they forget that animals are also a part of our team and loved ones too. Um, but it's funny. I tried to like purpose. I'm a recognized I have a public figure, have a following. So I just years ago I booked a reading and I didn't want to give over my full information so that they couldn't look me up, whatever. And the person wouldn't know me through a hole in the wall because I was very private with my identity. The first thing she starts talking about is Dr. Mikao Usui, the founder of Reiki, and she goes, "Why is Dr. Usui around you? Do you practice Reiki? Do you do Reiki, right?" And I'm like, so I have a connection with the founder of Reiki, Dr. Usui. He comes through, many times in it as well as a guide. So, the clients, that I work with as well as my own team, that's there. But Reiki is great for, like I said, for opening up not only your channels as a practitioner, but clients opening up their own psychic, intuitive channels as well too. So it's wonderful. I just love how it works with so many different parts of who we are, to promote healing and progress and transformation in people's lives.
Absolutely. And another powerful modality you use is hypnotherapy and past life
Mm.
regression. Can you talk about your passion with that?
Yeah, as a young kid in my near-death experience, I saw, a couple different lifetimes, and one of those lifetimes was like scary to me. It was a life in which I, succumbed to suicide. And I saw how closely related the near-death experience was to that lifetime. But as a kid, I would just sometimes get haunted by these same images, these same situations that I had. It wasn't until I had an intuitive session years later where the person picked up exactly what I was seeing, what happened, everything like that, that gave me a validation that this wasn't something, cooey or whatever, but this had validity to it, and this had weight to it. And so I really wanted to a lot of the work that I do is inner child work. I work on this in myself, but also with people. I want to make sure that they have someone to go to, some support system that they go to, because I just know how pivotal our lives are in terms of the life that we live and learning from the point of origin, behind some of our talents as well as, lessons could be a great pivotal point of transformation in one's life. So I think we're very focused on learning global history to kind of be an Earth citizen. I think it would be important to know our own history so that we could be really connected to the life that we're living so we could move forward in a way.
It's incredibly powerful to have perspective on the past.
Yeah.
It really, yeah, to transform who we are in the present and going forward. When you went to school to become a clinical social worker, did you know that you were going to pair past life regression with it?
No, I mean, I try to separate church and state as much as I can, but what's funny is social work throughout the years, and I think the pandemic has done this in a way where they just, are cognizant, they're still, archaic in some ways from that level, but they're opening up more to other modalities and really recognizing the spirituality, of a person, not just the psychological, social, emotional components. And I think sometimes crises open up this need that there's a part that needs to be nurtured almost, and so they're open to that. But I think it's helped in a way for people to come to me that they see that okay, this guy isn't some '60s Woodstock guy, whatever, and no disrespect to that, but this guy, is a grounded professional. And I think past life regression was helped greatly by Dr. Brian Weiss, who's a Yale trained psychiatrist, and that gave reincarnation and past life a lot more of a household name and destigmatization of the practice of it and the usage of it. So I think that degree to me is just a piece of paper, but to other people, it could be a security, measure, and trust builder. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, he has beautiful work, many lives, many
yeah,
masters.
yeah.
Beautiful work. So you said you don't separate. Excuse me. You separate church and state. I thought that was like a clever way to say it. So you find yourself having kind of two different kind of clientele streams coming to you because of
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I integrate, what I can as much as I can in my practice. So I think one thing that's really, given weight throughout the years in our world, and particularly in clinical practice, has been mindfulness, which is like, the new wave of therapy or the new wave of cognitive behavioral therapy and, dialectical behavioral therapy. So I incorporate a lot of different groups within the mental health clinics that I've worked in throughout the years, and I find that it's great, because many times there's so much cumulative disadvantages and hardships in the outside world, and people just feel so powerless. And so to give people that power back to live from the inside out versus the outside in, could lead to so much transformation, and it could allow them to really see, their own beauty, to see the world not through their own world creating their mind, but for their mind to be able to create their world. So that's what we try to do. You know.
And do you find that with the more clinical side of things, when people ask you to come speak, do you find that you structure things in a way that is more palatable for the intellectual brain?
Yeah, I definitely like academic settings for that reason. I do speak in colleges, domestically, internationally. I've done stuff, and I do like that. I think the hardest thing to do is when you are academically inclined is to simplify it. So sometimes I'm on radio shows and I know, the vast majority are blue collar watchers, and stuff like that. And I have to say, okay, we need to dial it down. And that's not always so easy, to do, particularly when nerves kick in and, just your baseline is bound to just come out at some point because it's hard to suppress, when you're on a program. But I do, I try to meet people where their feet are at as much as I possibly can and try to pivot when I'm not, but it's easier said than done sometimes. Yeah.
So, like for instance, what story do you usually use in one environment versus the other of your experience?
Well, I mean, I'll just give an example. Like when I am talking to aged population, I'm not going to necessarily talk about my near-death experience because, for them, some of them are open to it, but like, people they just don't want to hear those they don't want to talk about death. They want to talk about, maximizing each moment. Versus people who might be in other stages in life, they might be more open to kind of wanting to hear that. But either way, I'm a therapist, and I believe in the power of exposure therapy, meaning that I think death outside of public speaking might be the number one, number two fear that people have. And so to improve on that fear, it's like we don't just sit, avoiding it. We have to like kind of be there, but you can't die to, you can't have that exposure therapy of death itself. You can, I guess, as a near-death experiencer, but for the average person, I wouldn't recommend it. But gradually talking about it and thinking about it and finding different ways to reframe it in a way while going through some of the human reactions that you have to it, I think could be helpful to transform the viewpoint that people have to it. But I think with death in particular, my goal is for people to transform beliefs that they have to maybe a faith to a potential knowing, that there's something beyond this reality.
What would you say that your current beliefs are with all your experiences with past life regression and your NDE? What is your conception of an intelligence within the universe, or a word such as God?
Hmm.
It's a very heavy question.
It requires
It
it
needs.
require it requires me to pick up my water bottle.
I will join you.
Drinks to that one.
Yeah, right. Get
um,
some water flow.
I think in a way there's two vantage points that people could have in their life. And there's many different ones, but for simplification, I'll use these two as examples. There's the victimization or the story, or what I call kind of like karma in a way, or the dharma. The purpose, the meaning, the essence, the source. And I think when we're coming from karma, we're almost kind of like coming from the human part, and that's a part of us, is that human side. But to me, the Dharma is more the essence, it's more of the purpose, more the meaning. And so I think we're here to transform, our own stories and the stories of world to be a story of meaning, a story of purpose, a story of great depth. And we could do that with this earth reality. And so with that, it doesn't just come in things that we label as that it can, but if you are doing the dishes and you can't be mindful, but you could be mindful, in a yoga studio, that's not, mindlessness, that's just, selectivity of what you ascribe to as a place where you could be mindful at a place that you could not. Sure, right situations could bring that up a lot easier. But I think it's important that it could be found in all things, that this sacred intelligence, this sacred awareness and presence can be found in all things. And I'm living proof that even death of the body, you could see it even through that. And I can't think of anything, lower than that in that reality, which represents this finite ending, that there's just, only new beginnings. And so I think it allows people to look at life through this growth oriented mindset, this opportunity mindset, that tries to see God in all things, even in the difficult ones. And you're wearing that hat, I think you could see God. Another way to describe it would be to look up at the world, not down, and to look up at the world through its true essence, its true potential, to see a single seed and its tree behind it. That all things have this divine, beautiful intelligence, within themselves. And sometimes we forget that because we identify what is and what is not, and we live in a very black and white kind of thinking. We all can fall privy to that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it does. Do you believe that life is being written and expressed? Or do you feel like it's being written more so than it's being expressed, or vice versa? If that makes sense.
Like free will versus destiny and stuff like that in a way. Or
Yeah, like, yeah, a vibe of that. Like a vibe of that. It's like, is it being played out? Are we understanding what exists, or are we writing what exists?
I think we have charts, and the more that we're in flow with who we are, we could experience that. But of course, I mean, of course, we have free will. That is never taken from any of us. I mean, we have free will. So for instance, like you have like a major transformational, period in life, but let's say you just ignore that. that could come in another form, to in a way.
Yeah.
So I think in a way, the messages are always repeated until lessons are embraced. So things come in different forms, and maybe it is not exactly as black and white what they say, but beyond that, things are bound to happen. They might just be a little bit different in presentation, whether we want to do that now or maybe 5, 10 years down the road. But I think the more that we're in our own flow and really connected to ourselves, I think we could be beyond our destiny. We could be beyond what we set out to do. We could be, you know, um, immeasurable beyond, limitations that we were supposed to hit. So we are unlimited beings, and we're connected to that. There's nothing that should ever stop us from what was set out. But we are connected from an infinite intelligence far greater than our own, and the more that we entrust in that, the more that we'll be in flow with our lives. But I think a lot of people think of life's purpose as just, in this lifetime. But if we're eternal beings, there's endless opportunities for that because we're eternal life. And so our life's purpose is never ending. We're always continuing to build and grow and evolve. And that's exciting, so people shouldn't be so hard on themselves if they're not, I think we're very traumatized by the school systems, and we kind of transfer that outlook towards spirituality where it's like a test that we have or regents or an SATs, and it's like pass fail. But we come from a God that loves us not so much for what we do, but who we truly are. We're not in love with our doing, we're in love with our own being. That's why we're called spiritual beings and human beings, not human doings. So
I agree. And we all have moments where it's just not going to make sense and it's just going to be a bleep of a moment, but the eternal is the love.
right.
Um, and so it's okay, even when like you're talking about like testing and schooling, like we don't measure up, like even within just a moment, it's okay, even though it's quite like, maybe
Yeah.
important, it's okay. Um,
I think we're very
Beautiful.
traumatized sometimes through our parents and our teachers, and sometimes that's transferred onto God and spirituality, and it's totally antithetical to that. From what I experienced in my NDE, it's a love so deep and so beautiful that it's just beyond anything that we've experienced, and we see that in some people. But I think to me, the essence of God, like we said, the DNA is unconditional, eternal, infinite love. So. Yeah.
I love it. So like you're talking about, there's all these types of karma, like karma between our family, karma between systems, karma between community, right? Society, or even schooling, right? Of how, we share um, interaction between others, what's expected of us and others, what's expected of this lifetime, what we believe we should be by the energy shared. And so I think like I'm going to jump a little bit, but with past life regression, it really looks at all these learnings that make up a person. And so I was wondering if we could kind of go back to your learnings with what you have discovered with other people's lives when you have regressed them.
hmm Yeah, regression therapy is very versatile in a sense that, people that I've seen as clients have had like certain health issues, and, they've been able to move the needle. And I view it as kind of like a last stop that you've tried every doctor, every modality, and they're not finding it or they're not able to fix it. And I found with some of my clients through hypnosis, they're able to transform, some of this stuff. I mean, I'll give you an example. We spoke about Dr. Brian Weiss. I think he has a daughter that's a clinical social worker, if I'm not mistaken. She was at one of his presentations, and she normally didn't go, but decided to go because she was having some eye issues, and she was about to have surgery. Then she was regressed, and she was regressed into a lifetime when she was burned in the eyes, and so she carried over that trauma, cellular memory in her body. And so when she had that, she was able to say, okay, that was then, this is now. And then after that, she never had issues with the eyes. And so examples like that are countless from people who, are healed. And I could have that in my own practice. But just, on the ground level, right, we talked about the physical, but we also talked about the multidimensional parts that it could help us with family, with emotionally, with understanding some of the life purpose that we have and some of the lessons and some of the core of who we are. So, there's a lot of depth there. There really is. And I think sometimes we look for love, God, intelligence thousands of miles away outside of ourselves. We're turning outwardly, but sometimes all we have to do is just turn the door and face the door the different way and turn inwardly, and we could find just so much resourceful information, right in our own backyard, and that's a beautiful thing.
What are the most exciting moments and ahas that you've come across within this work currently, like within the past year or months that you're still unfolding and learning and evolving with?
Talking about with my own life or with clients?
With just the work, your spiritual work and your spiritual awareness and how you're progressing, sharing.
I think the biggest lesson that I'm personally learning is finding a balance. Sometimes I'm just very focused on facing other people and people pleasing and giving my base what they want. But then other days I'm just not feeling it. I'm just not feeling 100%. And so I think the biggest thing is learning how to be authentic, learning how to be true and learning that it's okay to take a step back, and to understand that we're all connected. And so the better you are, the more connected you are to other people. And the heavier you are, the more divided and fragmented the work will be, the less abundance it will be. So I've learned it's about listening and tuning in and not always needing to keep up with this because I think with spirituality, there's almost kind of like the outer experience of this and the inner kind of. There's an outer game and an inner game, and those are very real parts of what we operate with. And I think it's learning to have an understanding that the better the inner game is, the better the outer game will last. And that's hard because I'm a type A doer. I got to do it, but learning how to step back is a major lesson that I'm learning. But also, at the same token, I think throughout the last couple of years, generating transformation past crises has been the biggest gift that I've gotten, with the pandemic. I think I saw so many parallels with people who felt suffocated within their own lives when everyone's talking about this, upper respiratory condition. And there's so much parallels with what I had in my own near death experience that I saw that the globe was having a near death experience and I had this in my own pocket. So finding that playbook that people could utilize where you're able to surrender, to a breath and intelligence far greater than your own pain is not only something that could help people to succeed, but it's a survival skill. It's how we could survive. And a lot of people are drowning because they're not letting go because we live in a world that likes to hold. We're very fearful often of letting go into the unknown. But that's what hypnosis is we have control through letting go. Mindfulness, kind of same thing. So, a lot of what we're able to progress our life with has to do with a different kind of muscle that we're accustomed to using. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So many different muscles to express who we are. If I may ask too, is there anything currently that you are teaching or sharing with people where they can find you and be a part of?
Yeah. Well, I do have a website at jacoblcooper.com. That's jacoblcooper.com. And there you could find me. I mean, I do a lot of local talks, but I'm going to be starting, to do some stuff on the internet. Might have a potential podcast that I am working on, so stay tuned. But I'm also finishing up the edits of my second book, in the moment. So stay tuned for my second book, which is titled The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. And that is really my dharma. That's the dharma of the near-death experience. That's the spirituality with practicality, the lessons from the afterlife to this life kind of thing. So I'm really looking forward to that next chapter of my writer's journey coming soon to people. So
That's really cool. That's
yeah.
fascinating. I'll be looking to check that out. And where are some other places that people can find you on social media if they want to interact with you?
Yeah, I do daily post on Instagram. I have a Facebook professional page as well as LinkedIn. So all that is on my website, but it's, Jacob Cooper, LCSW, Jacob Cooper, LCSW. You could find me on Instagram, Facebook. I do a lot of different daily inspirational posts that just, kind of come guided to me in my meditations with what people, could use and improve their life. But more importantly, inspiration, which is the oxygen of our everyday times. So, I hope people could come and be inspired. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to say, Jacob, thank you so much for being with us today and your insight and your stories, just your beautiful energy. Is there anything you'd like to share as a last word of advice before we end the show?
Absolutely. I read yesterday. I was speaking at what's called the New Life Expo, and a beautiful message came to me that people needed to hear this week. And I drop this message time to time, but it has to do a lot with my near-death experience, but also with the times that we live in. And so this is a beautiful teaching from Albert Camus, which is a well-known philosopher. And if is it okay if I read it for 1 or 2 minutes? Is that
Absolutely.
cool? So
Yeah, go
the
for it.
message is, and this is the message of the day. In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I recognize that through it all, that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer, and that makes me happy. For it says, no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better pushing right back. I'm living proof of this, and I think we all are, with the last couple of years, that what is inside us and all around us is infinitely greater, than anything that's put in our path. And so many times the challenges are there to remind ourselves of who we truly are and what's inside. So I hope that could make sense.
Absolutely. That is the message and power of the wonderfulness of resistance. So thank you very much, Jacob. And for everyone to feel that and learn to understand that, I'm going to wish everyone a beautiful week. Go with love, light, luck, and live, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.